I'm writing to seek your opinion on my situation. Let me begin by providing some background about my life and then explaining my issue. I am currently 34 years old and my wife is 31. We've been married for a little over 8 years and have been a couple for 10. Overall, I would describe our marriage as extremely satisfying and completely fulfilling in every aspect. We enjoyed spending time together, had great physical chemistry, and were each other's best friend. I had complete trust in my wife, and she in me. Did you notice how I described everything in the past tense? You'll understand why in a moment. By choice, we hadn't started a family yet because we wanted to enjoy our lives for a while and save up for a down payment on a nice home. We purchased the house last year, and this year we had planned to start our family. However, that's definitely not going to happen now. I have a stable job and a good income, while my wife works as an elementary school teacher. She excels in her job and her students and their parents adore her. Keep all of this in mind as I share what happened next. Last Tuesday, I received a phone call from a woman who urgently requested that I call her back, as she had important information to share with me. I didn't recognize the name, and I suspected it might be some kind of scam, so I deleted the message. Typically, when I receive such calls, I also block the number, but this time, I forgot to do so. Later that day, I received another call from the same number, and I allowed it to go to voicemail. In the voicemail, the woman identified herself as the spouse of a former colleague of my wife who had recently passed away. She mentioned that she had some crucial information to convey and urged me to call her immediately. I didn't recognize the names of either of them, but I thought perhaps she was attempting to contact my wife to relay the news about his passing. I closed the door to my office and dialed her number from my personal cell phone. She answered promptly and didn't waste any time getting to the point. She first introduced herself and then proceeded to inform me that her husband had recently succumbed to cancer after battling it for over a year. I expressed my condolences, took note of his name, and assured her that I would inform my wife about his passing. She interrupted me and clarified that her reason for calling wasn't that. She then went on to explain that, while receiving hospice care and nearing the end of his life, her husband had confessed to having a 3-year affair with my wife, spanning from mid-2015 through the summer of 2018. Hearing this news caused a surge of cortisol through my body, and my heart began to race. I was left in shock by her revelation, and I fell silent, struggling to find words. After composing myself, I inquired whether it could have been a result of medication-induced hallucinations. She assured me that she was absolutely certain, as she had later discovered hundreds of messages exchanged between them on her husband's laptop. She also found a disturbing video of their final encounter, which took place on August 17, 18. As she spoke, I kept expressing my disbelief. I requested her to send me evidence and provided her with my personal email address. She proceeded to copy and send me some of the most incriminating messages they exchanged, but the video file was too large to be sent via email or text. I asked if she had a USB drive. She didn't, so she went out and purchased one. Upon her return, she called me, and I guided her through the process of copying the video onto the drive. The following morning, she sent the drive to my office via overnight delivery, and I received it on Thursday morning. On that day, I brought my personal laptop to the office with the sole intention of watching the video. I inserted the thumb drive and pressed play, and what I witnessed left me in disbelief. There was my wife, accompanied by an unfamiliar, awkward-looking man, engaging in actions I cannot describe here. Let's just say it was deeply disturbing. Some of their actions were not only repulsive, but also unhygienic. In the 29-minute video, both of them were quite vocal, laughing with pleasure and clearly reveling in what they were doing. It was sickening. When I initially started the video, I must admit that I immediately began crying and felt nauseated. However, as I continued to watch, my sorrow transformed into an overwhelming sense of anger and sheer rage. Fortunately, my wife wasn't present when I viewed the video, as I'm uncertain how I would have reacted if she had been. It's currently 7:09 p.m. on Thursday evening, and I've been composing this post for the past hour and a half. Earlier this afternoon, I phoned my wife and informed her that I was going out to dinner with clients. Occasionally, I have to do this for work, and she bought my explanation. Regarding my course of action, I'm not entirely certain, but I'm strongly inclined toward pursuing a divorce. I couldn't bring myself to stay with her, and I'll never be able to forgive her. In fact, after witnessing her actions, I have no desire to be near her again without using personal protective equipment, PPE. I'm not joking about that either. Furthermore, the fact that the video is 4 years old doesn't change anything. She betrayed me, and I cannot overlook that. Now here's where I would appreciate your input. Should I confront her with the evidence and give her an opportunity to explain? Or should I directly engage an attorney and serve her with divorce papers? I haven't shared this with anyone else yet because, to be honest, I feel too ashamed. That's why I've turned to this anonymous forum to discuss it and seek your feedback. I assure you that I will read all the comments. Update 1. I'd like to provide a brief update on the current situation. After having dinner on Thursday evening, I returned home and acted normally with my wife. Fortunately, I managed to keep my distance from her, and she didn't attempt to initiate any physical closeness. On Friday, I took the day off and met with a divorce attorney after doing extensive research online. I presented all the evidence, including the video, to the attorney. She explained to me that although my wife clearly violated the marriage vows, it would not impact the outcome of the case. I inquired about this, and she clarified that our state follows a no-fault divorce system, meaning either party can end the marriage at any time without assigning blame or asking questions. I asked her how this was possible, and she told me it's the law. She mentioned that we can attribute this legal framework to Ronald Reagan, who initiated it back in the late 60s while he was the governor of California. She explained that several other states have since adopted similar laws. I found this surprising because I had always regarded him as one of our finest presidents. But now I have some doubts. Nevertheless, my decision to proceed with the divorce remains unchanged. It simply implies that I'll end up in a much worse financial situation as a result of this ordeal. What I'm currently grappling with is whether to confront her or simply wait to serve her with divorce papers. I want to wait, but I'm not sure how much longer I can hold out. It has been incredibly challenging to be around her over the past 2 evenings, and I'm dreading seeing her again tonight. As I write this on a Saturday morning, I'm sitting outside a coffee shop just down the street from my house. I informed my wife that I needed to respond to some work emails and was coming here to do so, which is something I occasionally do. Fortunately, she didn't insist on accompanying me, but she has already sent me a couple of texts inquiring about when I'll be returning home. I suspect she may sense that something is amiss with me. That's the extent of my update for now. Second update. It's Sunday morning, and once again I find myself sitting outside a coffee shop. But this time, I'm 20 miles away from my home. About a week ago, I reached a breaking point and confronted my wife about her affair. I couldn't hold back any longer, so I did it last Sunday morning. I managed to get through Saturday because we went to the museum and had dinner with another couple, so I didn't have to spend much time alone with her. That night, we were both too tired from the day to attempt any kind of intimacy. The following morning, while we were in the kitchen and she was making coffee, I made the decision to confront her. Perhaps I shouldn't have done it then, as I was feeling irritable and filled with anger. But I went ahead. I asked her if she knew a certain person, her affair partner. When she heard his name, she turned and looked at me with a surprised expression. Initially, she said no, but then admitted that he was a science teacher at the junior high. With my tablet in front of me, I mentioned that I had read about his passing due to a serious illness. She responded, saying it was awful and that he was so young. She continued, mentioning that she didn't know him well but was aware he had a wife and son. I let some time pass and observed her after she sat down and served me coffee. She appeared anxious and on edge, frequently glancing at her smartphone. After a few minutes, I asked if she had ever collaborated with this man in any way. She looked at me in frustration and replied with a firm no. Then she asked why I was inquiring about him. I responded by asking if she was absolutely certain, to which she affirmed with a confident yes, and acted as though my question was unreasonable. At this point, I was fed up with beating around the bush, so I decided to be direct. I informed her that I had evidence of her 3-year affair with this man and demanded that she come clean immediately. She inquired about what I was talking about, and I told her that she knew exactly what I meant and should stop pretending otherwise. Her response was to burst into tears and ask how I had found out. I told her that the method wasn't important, but I had all their love messages as proof. She attempted to gaslight me, claiming that those messages were merely part of a fantasy roleplay and that nothing physical had ever occurred between them. I interrupted her and asked her to repeat herself, and once more she insisted that there had been no physical contact. I then showed her the video of them together and pressed play, which caused her to lose her composure. She transitioned from denying any wrongdoing to apologizing and stating that it had all taken place 4 years ago, and she had since changed as a person. Afterward, I stood up, left my seat, and walked out to the patio, with her trailing behind me. She was crying and pleading with me to talk, but I expressed my desire to be alone. She continued to cry loudly and raised her voice, repeatedly saying, "Please, please." To avoid causing a scene in our neighborhood, I returned to the house. By that point, I was becoming increasingly angry and went into the bedroom to start packing. She tried to pull me away and hugged me in an attempt to prevent me from leaving. I warned her that if she didn't release me, I would send the video to her parents. Upon hearing this, she promptly let me go and lay on the bed, crying and repeatedly apologizing. I completed my packing and left the house. When she asked where I was headed, I informed her that I'd be staying in a hotel for a while. I left her there, crying, and drove away. I drove to the same coffee shop where I am today, just down the road from my office. From there, I made a reservation at the hotel across the street and spent the morning contemplating my next moves. Throughout this period, my wife persistently called and texted me, but I didn't respond until I checked into the hotel at 3 p.m. During the call, which lasted nearly 2 hours, I informed her that I intended to divorce her and she should get prepared for it. The rest of our conversation was filled with her pleading with me and trying to change my mind. At one point, I asked her to explain her relationship with her affair partner. She stated that they both shared a specific disturbing fetish, and that was the extent of it. She explained that their physical actions held no emotional significance, attempting to prove it by criticizing the man's appearance. She insisted that I could see from the video how unattractive and emaciated he was. She argued that it was evident she would never leave me for him, and their meetings were solely to satisfy the shared fetish, which she claimed she no longer had. In response, I suggested that she might have serious mental issues and advised her to seek professional help. Perhaps unwisely, she immediately embraced this statement and admitted that she might be insane for her actions. She then transitioned to emphasizing that all of this had occurred over 4 years ago, and she hadn't thought about being with anyone else since. I countered by asserting that the only reason she ended the affair was that her affair partner moved 5 hours away to take a position in another school district. She attempted to convince me that she had ended it long before that, but I pointed out that the video was recorded the day before he and his family left town. She had no response, and it became clear to me that my wife was not only a cheater, but also a habitual liar. On Monday of the past week, I met with my attorney to inform her of the weekend's events and express my desire to expedite the divorce process. She agreed to proceed and recommended that I cease all direct contact with my wife, directing all future communications through her. She also cautioned against confronting my wife without witnesses, emphasizing the potential risks. She mentioned that she has dealt with numerous instances where husbands were wrongly accused in similar situations. I took her counsel seriously and informed her that I would follow this approach moving forward. So, that's the current situation. Everything has unfolded rapidly, and I haven't had the opportunity to grieve the end of my marriage. I don't feel too terrible at the moment, but I'm aware that it will catch up with me eventually. Third update. Once I granted my attorney the permission to fast-track the divorce, I shared the news with my family, and they expressed shock and disappointment in my wife's actions. Their primary concern was my well-being, and I reassured them that I was coping. Nevertheless, they decided to visit me for a few days the following week. The following day, my mother-in-law, MIL, called me and apologized for her daughter's behavior. She inquired if there was any chance I might reconsider or take some time to think before proceeding with the divorce. I explained that I had already made up my mind and now just wanted an amicable divorce to move on. She understood my position, and we ended the call on good terms. During the following week, my parents arrived in town on Thursday and checked into the hotel where I was staying. I took Thursday and Friday off work to spend time with them, and we enjoyed sightseeing during the day and dining out at night. On Saturday morning, my mom informed me that my in-laws had reached out and wanted to meet my parents for lunch. I didn't see any issue with that, as our parents had maintained a friendly relationship since our marriage, though they weren't exceptionally close. They exchanged pleasantries and stayed in touch periodically. I agreed to the meeting and suggested they gather at a nearby restaurant. While they were there, my mom called me and relayed that my in-laws wanted to see me. I invited them to come over to the hotel and we arranged to meet on the back deck by the pool. We gathered, and it was pleasant to see them. My in-laws were not insistent at all. They expressed genuine apologies and concern for my well-being. During our visit, they were considerate and didn't attempt to persuade me to reconcile with their daughter until near the end of our meeting. At that point, my mother-in-law, MIL, asked if there was any chance of forgiveness and continuing the marriage. I regretfully informed her that there wasn't any possibility. She accepted my response, acknowledging that she had to make the effort at least. I assured her that I understood her perspective. We exchanged hugs, bid our farewells, and they departed. That concluded our meeting. Now I must await the scheduling of the hearing to bring closure to this chapter and move forward with my life. Final update. A year later, I anticipated a swift divorce process due to our state's no-fault divorce laws, but it didn't turn out that way. I had to wait nearly 9 months for the hearing. I also mistakenly believed that no-fault divorce meant a simple 50-50 split, but that wasn't the case. Despite covering 70% of the bills and contributing 85% of the assets, I still had to pay alimony. Instead of a 4-year alimony obligation, my attorney negotiated an additional lump sum payment of $29,000, paid to my ex-wife after we sold our house. It felt unfair to me. My attorney explained that I could have protected the assets I owned before the marriage, but my mistake was adding my wife as a joint owner right after we wed, resulting in a 50-50th split. All of that is in the past now, and there's nothing I can change about it. I'm just relieved that it's all behind me, and I'm a free man. Now, regarding my ex-wife, we remained civil throughout the process, although she continuously asked for a second chance right up to the divorce and for weeks afterward. She claimed to be infatuated with me and persistent in her pursuit. She hasn't been overly intrusive, but every few weeks she sends me a text, reminding me that she still thinks about me and that she'll always be available if I change my mind. The strangest thing she asked last week was whether I'd be willing to have a child with her. I told her no, as we're divorced. She then inquired if I would be a biological material donor so she could have a child using my genetic material. I told her firmly that it's not going to happen, and if she wants to have a child, she should consider another relationship or explore the option of a donor. She insisted that she doesn't want another man, and if I won't be the father, she won't have children. That text exchange left me deeply concerned, and I hope she reconsiders her stance. While I do care about her well-being, I believe I'll need to cease communication with her. The next time she reaches out, I plan to convey this message in a firm but gentle manner. Meanwhile, I intend to contact her parents and inform them about her recent behavior, hoping they can discreetly intervene and help resolve the situation. That's the update for now. I may have lost half of my net worth, but at least I've regained my freedom.
All right, that was a fun story. Now let's move on to another exciting one. Stay tuned and let's dive in.
It all began when my mother came to visit me at school, as she always did. She stayed in a nearby hotel during her visit. While we were having dinner, her phone kept receiving messages. At one point, when she thought I wasn't watching, she took out her phone and began texting someone her hotel location and room number. This surprised me, and my heart started racing. After dinner, I pretended to head back to my apartment while she went to her hotel room. In reality, I drove to a quiet, secluded place and started crying. These events would eventually lead to the breakdown of my family and my close relationship with my mother. It's been more than a year since that crucial night, and I'm currently in my 3rd year of college. I'm facing a tough decision, whether to enter the NFL draft or complete my 4th year of college. My college coach is urging me to finish my degree, but I can't help but feel it's more for his benefit than mine. Deep down, I know that the best choice for me is to pursue an NFL career and start making a living. I really miss having my mother by my side, especially during my football games when I was just 14. At that time, she never missed a game, not even a practice. I could always rely on her to be in the stands, cheering for me, whether it was a cold winter day or a hot summer afternoon. She was my most devoted supporter. However, things changed when I discovered that she started a relationship with 2 of my teammates during an away game. It was incredibly embarrassing and made me consider leaving the program. Even though our relationship soured, my father, who had always been in the background and hadn't played a very active role in my life, encouraged me to stay on track. After the conflict, I decided not to let my mom attend any of my games. It was challenging, and it took a while to get used to her absence in the stands. To understand how this all started, let me give you some background. I have 2 older sisters, and I grew up in a household with both parents. My dad was a workaholic, and my mom worked part-time as an accountant while also being a stay-at-home mom. When I was about 14, I began to notice that my parents were gradually drifting apart. First, I noticed that they were sleeping in separate bedrooms. Then I observed that they were arguing a lot, but my dad would often walk away from those arguments. He didn't want his children to witness him fighting with his wife. Even though my mom and I were close, I always had a lot of respect for my dad. It wasn't always like that, though. I had to hear my mom complain about him not doing certain things, and I felt like she sometimes focused on issues that could have been overlooked. I was undeniably close to my mom, and yes, I'll admit it, I was a mama's boy. She had always been there for me, maybe a little too much at times, perhaps a bit too enthusiastic. Especially when it came to motivating me and developing my skills, she played a significant role in getting me to where I am today. I give her credit for attending all my games and practices. I always knew she'd be there cheering me on. I'm not saying my dad wasn't present, he was. He's the silent type, and when he wasn't working, he enjoyed taking me into the woods. My dad has consistently provided guidance and support, but he allowed my mom to take the lead at home and in raising me. He did this mainly to avoid conflicts with her. When it came time for me to choose a college for football, my mom played a significant role in the school I ultimately selected. I was a highly sought-after recruit with multiple scholarship offers, and I depended on my mom to help me make the right choice. She made a wise decision because the program I'm currently in suits me well. My college was several hours away from home, and my mom would visit me in college, staying in a hotel at least once every 2 weeks. At first, I thought she was coming to watch my games or attend away games, but it turned out there was more to it. If she hadn't gotten involved with my teammates in an embarrassing way, everything might have been okay. Looking back, I can see that my mom and dad's relationship was deteriorating, mainly because my mom had become excessively controlling over my dad. She might have played a role in him becoming a workaholic, as their relationship became strained due to her influence. I used to think that my parents hadn't divorced yet because they were waiting for me to move out. But even after I left, I expected them to eventually split up. However, they didn't. My mom is an attractive woman, and I've always been aware of that, partly because she would remind my dad of what a catch she was. And she was right. I noticed my friends talking about my mom and the interest they showed in her since high school. At first it was embarrassing, and I didn't like the attention she was getting. I wished she wouldn't come to my games, but I eventually got used to it. I saw coaches and players looking at her and asking me about her, finding reasons to start conversations with her. Everyone was always respectful, and she would dismiss it. I never in a million years thought she would consider being unfaithful to my dad. I'm not sure why I thought that way, but I had always looked up to her. Everything changed in my second year of college when we had a game. My school was in the Southeastern Conference, and it was during this time that things took a different turn. I won't provide specific details about my position or the school I attended because I'd like to remain anonymous. I was one of the top players on my college football team, and it seemed like a sure thing that I would make it to the NFL. People admired me, and as college athletes, we had the chance to invite our family members to our games, even when we played away from home. For this specific game, my mom and older sister were supposed to come and support me, but my sister had an exam and couldn't make it. My dad, as usual, didn't attend my away games due to his busy work schedule, and he and my mom often didn't get along. They argued a lot, so he preferred to avoid the games. We were on the road for about a week, and what struck me as odd was that I didn't see my mom much during that time. This was unusual because she had joined the trip to support me. I assumed that she must be busy with work, and I appreciated the fact that she made the effort to be there for me, even though she had work commitments, something I believed my dad wouldn't do. It wasn't until a week later that I started hearing rumors from a teammate that one of my fellow teammates had been involved with my mom. Initially, I thought they were just trying to mess with me or tease me, as we often did to each other, to mentally challenge one another. Additionally, many players were envious of me because they knew I had a promising future in the program, so I dismissed it, thinking it was merely psychological games. However, the rumors persisted, and I began hearing that 2 other teammates had also been romantically involved with my mom around the same time. Despite this, I hesitated to confront my teammates because, once again, I found it difficult to believe. It's worth noting that it wasn't uncommon for family members to travel long distances to attend their son's games. I wasn't the only one. Almost all of my teammates had family members who came to watch our games, and most of us came from out of state. Everything took a different turn for me one day as I walked towards my mom after a game. I noticed that she was texting and had a smile on her face. When I approached her, she quickly tried to hide her phone, but her body language made it evident that she was concealing something. Later, during dinner at a restaurant that evening, her phone kept buzzing, and she couldn't divert her gaze from it. At one moment, she must have thought I wasn't paying attention, perhaps underestimating how much I'd grown. I observed her texting someone her hotel location and room number. It seemed like she couldn't wait to finish dinner, even though she had previously used the excuse of needing to go to bed early. However, this time was distinct because I had just seen that text message meant for someone else. Previously, I didn't mind cutting dinner short with her since I had my own commitments, friends, and even girlfriends who invited me to various events. We exited the restaurant, and she gave me a hug before rushing to her car. I was left feeling bewildered and uneasy because I couldn't grasp what she was doing. That's when it struck me that this wasn't the first instance of her behavior like this. It felt like I was experiencing déjà vu, and I felt betrayed. It was as though all along she had been coming to my school not to visit her son, but to be with someone else. When I discovered that my mom was being unfaithful to my dad, a whirlwind of emotions overwhelmed me. Initially, disbelief washed over me like an icy wave. It was impossible to comprehend that the woman I had admired and loved my entire life, my own mother, could betray my dad in such a manner. As the shock faded, anger flared up inside me. I was furious with her for jeopardizing our family, for betraying my dad, and for putting me in the middle of it all. Anger also swirled towards the teammates involved, for breaking a trust I didn't even realize was at risk. Sadness and pain followed, as I experienced a deep sense of loss. The family that I had always known, the stability that I had taken for granted, was now shattered. It was as if a piece of my heart had been ripped away, leaving an ache that felt insurmountable. Confusion gnawed at me. I had so many questions. Why she did it, how long it had been happening, and how I could have been so unaware. I felt like I was lost in a maze of secrets and desperately wanted to understand it all. Guilt also crept in. I wondered if I could have done something differently, if I had missed any signs, if I had played a role in this situation. It was a persistent, self-doubting feeling that was hard to shake off. All these emotions tangled together, creating a tumultuous storm inside me. I was caught in a whirlwind of disbelief, anger, sadness, confusion, and guilt, all while trying to come to terms with a shattered reality. It was an incredibly painful and bewildering experience that left a lasting impact on me. I got into my car and made it seem like I was driving away, but instead, I headed to a secluded place. My mind was racing with thoughts, and the more I dwelled on the situation, the angrier I became. I had always thought my mom was visiting her son, but now doubt clouded my perception. I wasn't sure if she had come to see me or someone else. With each passing moment, a surge of anger built up inside me. My anger wasn't solely directed at my mom, but also at the other person involved, whom I suspected to be a teammate. It made me question whether the rumors I had heard for months were actually true. It felt like everyone was mocking me, and I couldn't shake the thought that she might have yielded to advances from students and staff members over time. I wasn't always keeping a close watch on my mom during the game or when she visited me. My focus was on the game, on the ball. After all, she's an adult, my parent, and she's married. Honestly, if she had chosen to divorce my dad and be with someone else, I wouldn't have been too upset about it. What bothered me the most was that she was doing this right here, in a place where people knew me well. I had a significant presence in that area, and I needed to stay concentrated on my game. She was supposed to assist me with that, but now it seemed like she was becoming a distraction. A few hours went by, and I decided to go to her hotel room to find out who she was having a relationship with. When I reached the hotel's parking lot, I scanned the area, hoping to spot a familiar car. However, the parking lot was crowded, and there were so many similar cars, including those driven by people I knew, that it felt like it could be the entire football team's vehicles. I stormed into the hotel, paying no attention to the people around. I knew her room number, so I went directly there. I pounded on the door, without worrying about the commotion. It took a while, but she eventually opened it. She stood there with her hair in disarray, gazing at me as if I were the one who had lost my mind. I moved her aside to enter the room and find out who she was with. She tried to block me, but I went into the room and found no one there. That's when I noticed the bathroom door was closed and locked from the inside, so I forcefully crashed into it several times until it finally gave in. By this point, my mom was screaming, and to my surprise, I discovered not just one teammate, but two in the bathroom. It turned out to be one of the guys who had been rumored to be involved with her and another friend who always hung around with him. I knew this second guy as someone who was known for dating girls around the college. He was an average player who occasionally made significant plays but had no real future in football. The fact that he had pursued my mom instead of anyone else struck me as jealousy over my future and success. I lost control and immediately got into a physical altercation with both of them. They couldn't handle my anger, and one of them fled the scene. I continued to confront the other guy, striking him in my rage. My mom and another person who must have heard the commotion stepped in to restrain me. I wasn't sure who the man was, but he urged me to leave quickly, explaining that someone might have called the police and I could risk getting arrested. He appeared to recognize me or know me from somewhere. At this point, my mom was in tears, pleading with me to leave. I left my teammate in a severely injured state as I exited the hotel room and got into my car. Before I departed, I couldn't contain my anger and told my mom that I was cutting ties with her. My fury toward her was just as strong as it was toward him. I took his actions personally because I believed it wasn't about love for him. It was an attempt to disgrace me. As I drove back to my apartment, I called my dad and shared everything with him. Surprisingly, he was the one who managed to calm me down. He acted as if it wasn't a significant issue and reassured me that it wasn't about them, but about me. He stressed that I was the star, the future, and that there would always be challenges and obstacles trying to bring me down. What truly mattered was how I handled those situations. The aftermath of the incident was overwhelming. I was informed that the police were searching for me and the teammate I had fought with was considering pressing charges. He used his connections to make the legal problems go away, sparing me a visit to the police station. The coach then had a private conversation with me and assured me that he would have done the same thing in my position. He echoed the sentiments my dad had shared, emphasizing that I was the star player and that others, with no real future in the sport, might attempt to undermine me. He also shared his own past, explaining how his first wife had been unfaithful and why he had difficulty trusting women. Following our conversation, he made it seem like I might have been reacting strongly to the entire situation, but he did acknowledge the humiliation I had experienced. He pledged to do his best to remove those teammates from the program, and he followed through a few months later. With this assurance, I felt a sense of duty to remain in college for one more year instead of immediately entering the NFL draft. My siblings got wind of the story, and everyone distanced themselves from her. My dad initiated divorce proceedings, and I haven't communicated with her since, despite her attempts to reach out. If she had been involved in an affair during her own time, when she wasn't using a visit to me as an excuse, and especially not with two of my teammates, maybe I wouldn't be as upset as I am with her. She nearly got me expelled from the program and derailed my future. While I do miss her presence at my games and the support she used to provide, it will take some time for me to heal from all this and rebuild a relationship with her. I don't typically hold grudges, and I didn't expect this one to last almost a year. Currently, I've already forgiven her, but it's challenging to rebuild our connection because being in the same program with people who are aware of what happened constantly reminds me of it. I won't allow this incident to alter my career path because I'm stronger than that. People may still ridicule me and gossip about me, but my resilience can handle it all. Changing my career trajectory due to my mom's actions and two teammates who won't have a significant impact in the long run would reflect weakness on my part. I'm eager to enter the NFL draft this year and leave all this in the past, but I also feel a sense of gratitude towards my coach for his support and guidance. I like to believe that there are a few more things I can learn and achieve before moving on.